Some of the most woke, politically correct, insufferable actors of all time collected in one movie to shit on European culture. That's what we watched. Hey guys, I'm back with another video. I want to now talk about 200 reasons why the Odyssey absolutely sucked. First, we're going to start with the first kind of topic or category, which is forced diversity and political messaging. Number one is the entire movie is based on misandry. So it's all about men suck, men rape, men go conquer cities, men make dumb decisions, men betray each other's trust, and men have to kind of go through a whole guilt trip session and try to come back as the hero. But they never really become heroes, we saw in the movie. So it's a movie about men ought to be guilty. Number two is the hero of the story is Elliot Page, actually, if you really think about it. It's Elliot Page's brother who was being the main villain, and it's Elliot Page who spoke to Odysseus before the king did. Actually, the king had to wait for Elliot Page to finish speaking, and also Elliot Page went along with the horse Trojan gimmick and got him success there. So actually one of the main good guys of the movie without any kind of strings attached or gray zones is Elliot Page. Number three is Anne Hathaway crying about not being the queen. Number four is you have the witch being super reasonable and morphing men into pigs as a political message rather than anything to do with the mythology. So they put the whole pig thing in there because they really just wanted to scream to you that these are the true inner words of these soldiers. They're just a bunch of pigs, and she just turns them into what they truly are. That's quite offensive to pigs, actually, because they're actually their own distinct species, and there's actually nothing wrong with them, is Christopher Nolan's interpretation that bad things equal pig, and men are bad, so they equal pigs. The next point is number 5, which is the witch grabs the knife faster than Odysseus, a trained soldier. So there's the knife right in front of both of them, but yet the witch managed to grab a knife before the trained male soldier. It's okay. Like, what, against Odysseus, the trained soldier, the commander? Sure. Then the number 6 is Zendaya haunting Matt Damon despite him not killing her. They just wanted to kind of force a sort of a guilt trip on us, and the good conscious guilt trip had to be in the form of Athena, which I thought was really weird because Matt Damon didn't really kill her. His soldiers did, but he's the one hallucinating her, which is weird. I thought Travis Scott's character was dumb, out of place. I didn't like his spoken word. I just thought it was out of place, and they just shoved it in there because they wanted to introduce the suitor scenes with some guy rapping or saying spoken truth, or just what it was just forced and utter nonsense. Number 8 is the Indian men on board of Odysseus' ship made no sense. It was dumb, it was out of place, it was forced. Why not have Greek looking actors? Why not have Greek actors instead of Asian, Southeast Asian, Indian descent? Or it's like putting, in Prince of Persia's army a Nordic or a Native American. It just doesn't add up. One of the main suitors after the main suitor, so there's the main suitor and then there's his colleague, is another black kind of actor. If there was kind of a black kind of citizens or a visitor to Greece, they would have not been sitting at the suitor table to be marrying the queen as just a level 1 thug. That's just not a thing that would have happened in history during that time. Makes no sense. Let's just stop with the forced diversity. Calypso being a nice woman instead of a deceitful kidnapper, someone who took advantage of him. The way the movie portrays her is just as a great kind of a character and a good moral goddess, right? She's healing him, she's making him stronger, she feeds him, she hunts for him, she tries to make him recall, hey, what happened? Tell me about this, tell me about that. Not a single Greek actor or Greek looking person. That is just disgusting in a movie about Greek mythology. Himesh Patel as Odysseus' second-hand man. Just what are we doing here? Why is his second in command an Indian-looking man? Or an Indian man, actually. Number 16, Lupita being Helen of Nairobi and not Troy. Lupita does not look like Helen of Troy. Has nothing to do with Helen of Troy. She's not of Troy, right? She's not of the area. Queen of that nature, if called from Troy, right? She would have been white, or she would have been Caucasian looking, or she could have been Kurdish, kind of Iraqi looking. We'll kind of let that slide. But no, I thought Lupita's acting was just terrible. Her character had no point. It was just, let's fit Lupita in there as an angry woman, and let's just make her speak back to that Shane from Walking Dead, who I thought was another tragic actor here. Made no sense. Some of the most woke, politically correct, insufferable actors of all time collected in one movie to shit on European culture. That's what we watched. So that's another point here on why I hate it. Now let's talk about environments and visuals of the movie, right? How did the environments look? How did the visuals look? To the environment itself was just not anything to do with the Mediterranean region. The climate, I mean, we'll talk about it, but there was few instances of snowing in islands, which you got to tell me this is like a British Isle or somewhere in the Scandinavian regions, because the Mediterranean Isles will not snow there, and they will not look like Iceland or Scotland, where this movie was shot multiple times. It's just not a good look when your movie looks like an English kind of setting rather than a Greek setting, about Greek mythology, though. And apparently, the average shot in this movie was like 3.5 seconds. So constant cuts from this scene to that scene. Costumes were atrocious. The main king, Agamemnon's, whatever his name is, his armor was just basically, again, Batman's armor. It was super fucking unnecessary in supposedly Bronze Age for this guy to have such an armor. Made no sense. Why didn't the rest of the army have this armor? Is another great question I had. The Greek longships were actually Viking longboats, and so were their houses. Their houses were not Greek housing or Greek looking architecture with pillars and marbles and stones. It was with wood and kind of like a Viking longhouse with a fire kind of in the court or the dinner area. It looked like a Viking place rather than anything to do with Greece or Greek or Mediterranean building. The islands kind of looked the same. They were hopping between like 3, 4, 5 islands, and they all kind of just started to become the same kind of British looking high cliff island that they approach. And it may have some vegetation and trees, and the Witches one didn't, but they all kind of looked like they were British Isles and had that foggy, pebbly beach look to them. And that's because the movie was shot in Scotland, Iceland, of just few places, and Nordic regions as well for a couple of the shots. That's instead of choosing to shoot in Turkey, Greece, Malta, and all these other Mediterranean regions that have those architectures, have those looks. Number 16 for this kind of category is that it felt dark, dingy, and there was a heavy reliance on fog. So the night scenes, there was tons of them. The whole sacking of Troy was a night scene, just to cover up the CGI and the enhancements they would add. A lot of the suitor level conversations and Hathaway scenes were in just darkness in like again Viking longhouses. And yeah, it was really dark and dingy, and there was a lot of CGIs, and the CGI was not good, especially with the monsters. The CGI felt off, and I want a loud, sunny kind of a visual. I don't want a dark, dingy, Dark Knight Rises, Gotham sort of visuals. Again, the islands felt more like Ireland and Scotland and not Greek Isles. So I need to constantly re-emphasize that, because it's a movie about hopping islands in the Mediterranean region. Now, you could say they got lost and they found their way out of the Mediterranean, but you're going to have to play with that. You're going to have to show us a degree of that. You can't just have the first islands be snowing and fucking Scotland-looking places. For instance, there was one island that had literally high cliff, pebble beaches, deep blue ocean. You could have literally been in Ireland. Their own hometown also looked terrible. It just looked ugly, uninspiring. There was like 3 buildings outside the citadel kind of a castle place, and it felt super cheap and not Greek looking again. Troy looked like Afghanistan or Morocco and not actually Turkey, or how the infrastructure would have looked like in Turkey. So again, that's just another annoying thing. And yeah, somehow they managed to make beaches in kind of Troy while they were landing to, sack it. Made it look like Normandy in some of the scenes. They made it look super gritty, super rainy and blue looking. Yeah, it just did not look like a Greek beach. The CGIs kind of look low budget as well from a visual perspective. Felt to me, it didn't feel epic. There was no scene like Troy where you have 2 armies facing up, where you can truly see the sizes of the extras and the effort put into it. It was covered by nighttime, super small scenes of zoom ups. So you would see Matt Damon with 2 people running behind him and behind a fire, or at max you would see like 5 to 20 soldiers in any one frame. So it didn't feel grand, it didn't feel epic. If anything, it felt small and quite low budget. And you kind of have to question how a 250 million pound or dollars movie had managed to make itself feel small. Agamemnon looked like Batman. The choreography of the army men was really bad. Like the way they were running around, the way the army moved and kind of communicated with each other, it didn't look like they were at all trained on how an army works together. It just felt like a bunch of extras came together to resemble an army, and they just went off their Google or mental knowledge rather than be coached. So let's talk about casting problems. I had tons of problems with the casting here. One was that UK actors were trying to do a really shitty American accent, and then other actors were doing a British accent. So you had this mix of American and British, but modern day vocabulary accent, which just came off as really mismatching to the scenes, and just, yeah, it felt off. It felt off. And it costed way too many faces that you would know without doing any iteration to any of the faces. So you knew it was Anne Hathaway, you knew it was Matt Damon and Tom Holland. Like, every actor just looked like themselves with a little bit of touch. So you never truly felt like you were watching somebody different, another character. You always felt like you were watching these kind of famous actors that people know, just playing around in costumes. So let's talk about Odysseus. He came off stubborn for the sake of it. It didn't seem like there was much depth to his stubbornness. Like, for instance, somebody would tell him something and he would just immediately talk back and say, no, I'm going to do this because I'm stubborn. That was the depth of it. And yeah, he spent like kind of the entire movie, 10-year period or 8-year period in the movie, say, throwing a fit for ending a war, basically, and coming out on top. He spends the entire movie sulking, moaning and bitching about what terribleness was done, how he broke Zeus's law, but yet he continues to make shitty decisions along the way and be stubborn and a scumbag. He acts like an atheist sometimes, like almost like screw the gods, but then other times he's constantly talking about Zeus's law and how it must not be disrespected and blah blah blah. I mean, there's contradictions in that guy's own story and character. The dialogues were quite terrible in my opinion, and so was the acting for Odysseus. At no point you felt like the guy had any depth, and it just felt like he had nothing important or wise or truly insightful to say, and he was just going through a mishmash of journeys to get to the end because he needs to have his ending victory scene. I like how they made him cheat on his wife and use the dementia excuse. I mean, again, he wasn't having a dementia. She was drugging him and taking advantage of him, but they didn't want to make a woman look bad, so they made him look bad. He chooses to be tied to a boat so he can listen to the siren. A dumb as fuck decision. Like, why would you make that decision voluntarily? There's no payoff to that scene. All we get is just lazy as fuck writing, where they don't want to actually write out how that scene would play out. So they tie him to the boat, play some shitty fucking low budget recorder, like a flute that everybody was laughing in the cinema. And Matt Damon just overacts for like a 30-second period. And that's the whole siren gimmick. I just thought that was a terrible scene, and it again proved that he makes dumb decisions. And I guess the movie wants you to think he's stupid, right? So that's why they got him making these terrible decisions. Another point is he has no relationship whatsoever with his men or his crew or son. I mean, he has no relationship with his son. The film kind of established that. The stupid dog scene where the dog dies immediately after Matt Damon touching him, I just hated that. I just thought, such a cheap, lazy writing again, when you just want to draw easy sympathy, so you put a dog there and you keep the dog around till the return of the main guy. Just shitty writing, in my opinion, when you get your kind of writing skills from ChatGPT rather than your brain or creativity, and when there's no secondary skeptic being like, hey, that's a bit lazy, that's a bit cheap, let's not do that. Let's actually produce a proper sympathy point. I thought the beggar storyline, where he constantly referred himself as a beggar, I thought that was trash. I wasn't really interested in that, and I found it funny. He kept saying it. He literally kept repeating, I'm just a beggar. We were like, we get it, bro, we get it. You don't have to tell that twice to every character you meet. Another point is he doesn't actually suffer at all, despite all the crimes he's committed, supposedly. He doesn't actually suffer. He has pretty good time. He reasons his way out of dangerous situations. He sleeps with different women, and he comes back killing hella people. How is he suffering for his crimes? How is he remorsing anything? Matt Damon, in no way, shape, or form does he try to look like a Greek, and his I would say makeup is just, again, it made him look like a fucking American or a Nordic character, an older Nordic person rather than a Greek looking person. So he doesn't look Greek at all. His acting was also super shallow. There was no depth. The crying scene where he's remembering the sacking, where he's touching Athena's hands, was so fucking cringe. People were laughing in the cinema. So yeah, there's a lot of things we can go to his mannerisms on, like his stubborn little points, but there was just not a lot of depth there that you would spend time on and say, that was good, that was bad. So let's move on to Anne Hathaway. I thought Anne Hathaway was insufferable. The acting was just classic Anne Hathaway, crying, moaning, being kind of broody and angry. And she tried to die hard this movie where it felt out of place. Everybody was being casual. She was being like super fucking noble acting wise, like acting like a noble woman would have back in the days, where everybody else is acting super fucking casual. So yeah, there's an inconsistency with Matt Damon acting super casual, right? Tone wise, and Anne Hathaway acting like a regent queen of a medieval movie. She speaks differently to the casual tone you see everybody else playing. Her rant against her son being pathetic and not up to her standards, I thought was interesting. Again, another point where they're trying to say, hey, the woman is capable, the men in this movie are incapable, but yet everything goes to the men because they're destined for it because of sexism or whatever kind of favoritism they want to draw attention to. I mean, apart from being brooding and moody and annoyed, you didn't really see much else. She turns a great offer from a suitor because she had some weird feeling Odysseus might come back. I mean, after 8 years, he offered a great kind of offer, and she turned it down because she had a feeling. She claims to have no control, but for 10 years, she was living in the best kind of the place in the city or in the castle or in the island. She was eating the best. So you can claim not being in control or not being the queen, but she was Queen Regent. Now let's get to Tom Holland, the son. He came off as kind of weak, pathetic, like I said, a man with no authority, a man who just gets bullied by level 1 suitors. And that's really bad. Showing a character who's meant to be the future king getting bullied by kind of generic villains who want to shag his mum really kind of puts him in a bad spot. The side quests where he tries to go to kind of this other island to learn about his dad, like that whole thing could have been caught and should have been caught. I mean, for the movie, for our sake, for audience sake, we didn't need to see that. Yeah, he's actually the weakest link, in my opinion, in the entire movie. He barely manages to defeat a level 1 suitor in the dining room, or at the end of the movie when a level 1 handmaid, a maid or a guard goes upstairs to throw weapons downstairs, he struggles. He almost dies to that guard, which is hilarious. He has no kingly qualities. He's not smart. He's not funny. He has zero positive attributes. He's not strong. He's not a good fighter. He can't do the bow thing. He doesn't have a good arrow shot. He has literally no positive characteristics, but then he becomes a king at the end of the movie and gets scolded by his own mom. Let's talk about the suitors. You had generic bad guy guard villains from Batman, basically. That's what you had. They had zero personality and they were just bad for the sake of it. So they would kick a dog when it's down because, people hate seeing animal abuse. Let's put that there. Let's grab easy sympathy through animal abuse. Which again, I thought was evidence of lazy, shitty writing. They want you to hate these bunch of guys, right? And they do it by getting them to do the lowest hanging fruit of writing capabilities. Oh, he kicks a dog, he's bad. Sure. These suitors could have had more sophisticated stories or actual characters, agendas or intentions, but we never got to see any of that. We just saw animal cruelty equals bad. Hate these suitors. The suitors, you're telling me, for 10 years have nothing to do. They're just sitting around at a dining table. Every night they come back to the same dining table. There's nothing else to do in the entire island. They don't go to other islands. And to my next point, they outnumbered Queen by like 50 to 100 to 1. And her guards probably, they outnumber them. But yet they don't do anything to force the queen to marry. I mean, what kind of fucking nonsense is that? The main suitors essentially comes down to the black guy and the annoying white guy. The one with the black guy was seen as a tougher kind of a villain, whereas the white guy seemed like a softer, he would make other people do his dirty work, which I thought was interesting when you talk about political kind of correctness there. So the white guy has to be cowardice. In terms of bad guys, the black guy has to be the badass. Cool. But neither of them have any personality, depth, or any bad qualities that you're like, you know what, there's something to this character. They're just generic Batman bodyguards. The suitors treat the beggars and blind guy bad unnecessarily. The movie really wants you to hate them because of the lowest hanging fruits ever. And one of the low hanging fruits is the dog scenes, and then another is the beggars. So anyone who's poor, anyone who's visiting, doesn't look good in shape, these level 1 suitors apparently bully them. Because again, the movie wants you to hate them. The movie can't be fucked to write a good story or develop scenes that are actually sophisticated, so they go for the lowest hanging fruits. And that's what a Nolan movie is. Then let's talk about some of the island characters, let's talk about Cyclops. So it's a CGI monster. I didn't like the CGI looks. I know a lot of people thought it was scary. I didn't. It doesn't speak until he gets hurt for some reason. the Cyclops doesn't say a word. It must have seen men before or dealt with humans before, but it doesn't speak until he gets seriously hurt, which I thought was an interesting little gimmick they put in there. Why make him fully animal, but then bring him back a little bit and give him humanity points by doing that, or making him cry, which we'll get into. But he also lives in the smallest cave imaginable for a creature of that size. His cave is basically super small, and he leaves no footprints to the cave. So he comes through in and out of that cave every day, but he leaves no visible footprints for the men to have seen. Somehow, despite being that big, he manages to milk sheep and make cheese, which is again just another ridiculous point here. He doesn't eat the sheep, but he instead eats the men, which I thought, again, if you're trying to eat something, you might as well eat the sheep and not the humans. If you can talk especially, you could communicate with the humans. But he eats the humans in full armor and only spits out their helmet. Why only spit out their helmet? What about their body or kind of skirts or pants that they were wearing? Again, just another interesting question I have. This happens over and again. He kills 2 people every night and then he falls right to sleep. Again, I thought that was just lazy as fuck writing, when you can't be asked to stick to the original script, mythology-wise, or you can't be really asked to produce something decent. I just thought that was a lazy thing. I was expecting kind of a horror-esque scenes and some chases, some big caves, lots of little, kind of the big monster going into the depths of the cave to try to find them, and them being almost having to negotiate with it like they did in the original mythology, or come up with a clever reason to escape rather than what we got. And then when they decided to escape, when they had it, Matt Damon decides to shoot him with an arrow, which I thought was interesting. Another point why I hated about this whole thing was that as soon as they hurt the Cyclops, it started crying. It threw a little fit. It maybe have killed like 1 or 2 people in that fit. But then he sits down and starts having a crying, sobbing session. And then starts saying some words. And then the men realize, oh, he can speak. Should we speak to him? Even though the men know that he's the son of Poseidon, right? Because they say that later on. Why'd you do that? He was the son of Poseidon. They decide not to speak with it or negotiate with it. They decided, hey, no, it's beyond reason because Matt Damon, Odyssey, said so. And that's why I was saying he's kind of a scumbag. He makes shitty decisions. And this was an example of that. So yeah, they managed to escape because they need to, and the plot needs to get them to the next island. But it looks like the Cyclops chases them until 1 meter away from the boat. And as soon as he reaches a meter away from the boat, he stops chasing them because they need to escape. And he starts cursing them, which I thought was interesting as well. Okay, so let's talk about the sirens. They're meant to be these mermaids that entice kind of travelers with the most amazing song that makes them go crazy and do insane things. Here, what they did was they made the most underwhelming, again, lazy choices possible. They decide to show from a distance what could be made out as a CGI looking mermaids in like a rock in the middle of the ocean. Matt Damon decides to tie himself to a pole and just make a stupid decision to just listen to the music raw. But again, this is lazy as fuck because they just basically play some flute noise while this is happening, and you can see Matt Damon suffering for like 30 seconds to a minute, and that's your siren scene, I guess. It's as simple as that. You can skip an entire island or a bit of the story within a very simple 2-minute plot line, which is he times himself to a pole, decides to listen to it, where other men go crazy, he doesn't, and we don't actually give you the music, we give you some sad flute music just to compensate. They don't actually play anything meaningful, and the music is actually quite trash as well there. What this also revealed was that Odysseus doesn't want to go home. And who gives a fuck at that point? I'm literally at that point thinking, is this movie going to pick up or get well or get interesting? And it doesn't really. Now we just learned the story about the guy trying to go home is about him trying to avoid home, which was, again, quite interesting. So apparently a simple earwax can block out these magical sirens who sing magical songs. But one guy manages to hear enough to be like, I want more of this. So he pulls off his earwax and then jumps right into the ocean because, the song is so crazy, you do crazy things. And we're not going to play the song because that would ruin it. And we're not going to develop a proper scene where these mermaids are swimming to the ship and trying to negotiate with it or entice it or flirt with the men. We're just going to put them far away where you can barely see them and just skip the whole thing by playing a flute music for two minutes and then call it a day. It was just lame as fuck, in my opinion. And again, it didn't look like the Mediterranean Sea or anything like that. It looked like somewhere off the shore of Scotland. Now let's talk about the witch. She comes off as a kind of an older Karen here with magical capabilities. Basically a 50-year-old Irish woman who is there to hate men and turn them into pigs, instead of a beautiful witch temptress who entices those men as well as Odysseus to stay as long as possible. In the mythology, she spends a year with Odysseus, but here she spends like 2 to 5 minutes with him and manages to listen to him and agree with him and release the men, which I thought, again, was quite an interesting move. Her entire existence in this movie, in my opinion, is to call men pigs and act as a sympathy character for women who have their house broken into by piggies, or men who act like pigs, or women who have to deal with men who eat like pigs. Because another problem I had, which is a 50-year-old Irish woman manages to pull a knife on a trained soldier, the same knife that's sitting in front of both of them. She managed to pull it on him faster than he manages to grab it. But despite having the leverage and having a knife on Matt Damon's throat, she decides to actually listen to him, listen to reason, because he was choking a raven, and she manages to go on a little rant about men being pigs. That's why she does these things, so you feel bad for her. And then because she's a woman and she can't do evil things, and every woman is a good character in this movie, she doesn't kill anyone, she reverses them back from pigs into men. That's one of the dumbest character decisions you could make if you're a witch, because you just turn these 13 men into pigs. They could kill you because they outnumber you and they have knives and armor. You don't have any of that. You just have food, and now they know not to eat your food, so you're quite screwed. Why would you make that decision when you have somebody at a knife point to actually outnumber yourselves and stack the odds completely against yourself? It felt like a trauma sub-story trash, just inserted in there instead of something cool, exotic, or mythical. Again, looked like Nordic or British Isles, not Greece, and that really pissed me off. There was also snow in that scene, yes. When the men arrive at the shore, there is snow in the fucking early arrival of the boats. Really hated that. And then you have Calypso. She's meant to be a kidnapper, a deceiver, someone who's kind of evil, sexually takes advantage of Odysseus and falls in love with him, like an obsessive stalker. But in this movie, she's the opposite of that. She's this cool, composed, calm character who tries to help the main guy get back home, recollect his memory, gives him the exact tip he needs to kind of build a draft and then go exactly where he needs to go. And Matt Damon is just walking around like a lost child at the beach, just collecting little woods while she's hunting, she's building things, and she's the one really engaging in the conversation. Yeah, so they turned what is meant to be an evil goddess, or a goddess with kind of not so positive traits, into just a great person all around who even tries to help him get back on his feet. The movie wants you to believe that it took Matt Damon 8 years for him to start realizing he's been there long enough to ask, how long has it been? Also, the movie assumes Matt Damon has no concept of time. So he would have noticed every night himself going to sleep, a week going by, a month going by, 12 months going by, a year going by. Matt Damon would have noticed that. He wouldn't have needed to ask how long has it gone. He would have known a long time has gone. He's been here for a long time. That logically doesn't add up as well. Like this sudden amnesia for 8 years that he loses. I hate the fact that she tells him where he needs to go, how he needs to do it, and how he won't die because Zeus has given him plot armor. Don't even worry about drowning, or don't even build a ship. Just go on a log, not even a draft, right? And you'll be fine because Zeus doesn't want you to die. So then why would you then watch the rest of that? If you know that, then you know the level 1 suitors are not going to touch him, because the guy just basically found his way back from Scotland to fucking Greek Isles. You know, if he managed to find his way there on a log, he can kill any level 1 suitor, right? So yeah, all in all, she seemed like a good entity, healing him, curing him to remember his memory or past, helping him to build a little draft, giving the exact direction of where to go and how to do it to get back home. Again, here's another character who we can't make to be evil or interesting, and she's just there to reveal plot lines to you. That's all she's there to do. And then you had the giant men in armor. I thought it was just, to me, I thought it was just a lazy, lame as fuck chase scene in the Nordics, because he just loves playing loud music and then tension scene where men need to immediately run back to the boats. And this happened over and over again. So by the time we dealt with the giant men in armor, it was just like, okay, get to the point, run to the boats and run away. That's what's gonna happen. And why was there a kid just waiting around and suddenly screaming? And why was there like a whore and an entire army just behind a hill waiting to attack. It's just shit movie logic, bad writing slop. And why is the kid human sized, but all the adults are giants? Just again, another nonsense. And apparently they broke Zeus's law, so that's why all of this is happening to them and they're being mistreated in every island they go. But the movie doesn't really acknowledge this because it was Odysseus who broke Zeus's law, but his men are the ones suffering. He's not suffering. He's having a great time. He barely gets a scratch. There was no exposition. There was no story here. We didn't learn anything about these men. We didn't learn anything about who they are, what land they arrived in. They arrive, they get killed, they run back to the boats. And again, it looked like the Nordics. It did not look like a Greek isle. So here's another instance where it was also snowing in these scenes where they were in the forests. Yeah, I'm kind of getting sick of the snows in a Greek mythology, especially when you're not in an elevation like Mount Olympus or anything to do with a mountain. Because believe it or not, those areas have mountainous regions. And then you had the hell scenes, right? It was another dark, dingy, green screen, lazy as fuck setting. And out of everyone in hell, Elliot fucking Page gets to speak to him first and immediately starts scolding him. Here's this guy way below him in the leagues and the rankings and the hierarchy, but he gets to outrank the king and all the other generals who died, speak to Odysseus first, and then scold him for him not telling him about the plans. And he goes on. That little scene goes on for like 2 minutes where he scolds him, and Elliot Page is not standing up. He's kind of crawling because they don't want to give you context of how short he is compared to other army men. So they have him crawl around to avoid looking small. And then somehow they want you to believe that he had no idea about the Trojan horse. I mean, how would he have no idea about it? He would have seen what's happening. He would have seen that all of his kind of army moved to two sides. How would it even have been possible for him to not be aware of this plan? It would have taken basically both 99.9% of the military to know except this one guy. So how was that really worked out? Also, I hate the thing where the king has to wait for Elliot Page to finish scolding Matt Damon for him to start talking to Matt Damon. Also, then another thing I hate is how much exposition is just handed. Plot lines are just handed. So every island they go to, it's like, now Odysseus, you need to go to this island because there's your answer of what awaits you is next, and that's in that island. And if you make this decision, this is going to happen. And if you make that decision, that's going to happen. That happens everywhere in this movie, but especially in Hell, where he was basically just given plot lines of what's happening in his home island, right, with the suitors and his wife, and what's happening in the next kind of journey bits that they're going to go on, especially with the sirens and the whirlpool and the fucking cliff giants that take a couple of men. So it's just plot lines being revealed to you instead of shown to you, just being told to you. And then the outcomes of those plot lines are also being revealed to you. So it makes completely redundant what you're about to watch next, because everything is just being fed to you, being told to you before you get to see it. And also, how is it possible for them to casually enter hell? Where is hell? How do they know where to go to hell? And how do they get to easily get in and get out where no others could do that? How? Also note that they just skipped how they moved from the Mediterranean into hell. Like that wasn't actually revealed to us in the movie at all. And again, right before the fucking hell thing finishes, they need to run away because suddenly the army is getting angry that they found out Odysseus is here. So the hell dead army is now chasing him, and they need to run back to their boats again, which just again is fucking Christopher Nolan copy pasting instead of coming up with an actual story. And then there was the sun god. So they really ran out of money. They really ran out of ideas and creativity. And this was a simple plot line of, here's some cows, these guys need to eat, and we're going to put the cows right in front of them. And again, it looked like a Nordic or a British island, not a Greek looking rock. By the way, why is there cows in this island? And this was meant to be Sun God's island. Sun God has such a small little island, but he's put cows there for some reason, which is really interesting. No visual entity known as Sun God was ever presented to us. And instead of leaving the island, they choose to stay. And basically, because the men are just going hungry, they choose to eat instead of starve, which they know, again, is going to get them killed. But yeah, I think this was the second lamest part of the movie where it just completely slowed down and they needed something to do for 15 minutes. So here are some scenes about, will they choose to eat or not? And if they choose to eat, they're going to die. And then next, we're going to show you them just basically dying on a boat crash. And then we get to the return scenes of when actually Odysseus returns back to the island. One, I thought it was an annoying as fuck subplot about saving the son from generic generic villains. The whole subplot line about Odysseus going to these temples to save his son, thought that was just over the top. How did he know he was there? It was just dragging on at that point in the movie. That whole thing didn't need to happen. We didn't need to see all of that. Matt Damon constantly saying he's a beggar, we get it. But he constantly said that, like almost like they couldn't be fucked to write any other script or dialogue, so they just copy pasted, I'm a beggar. I'm a beggar. He starts to not act like a beggar. He starts talking back to suitors when he has no rank or hierarchy as a beggar. It's like he wants to be the beggar, but he also wants to be the cheeky Odysseus, just poking fun at the suitors as well. And then suitors kind of beat him up a little bit, and you're expecting him to fight back, but nothing happens. He just holds it because that now is not the time and place to do this, apparently. Also, the suitors, right, are forced to do Matt Damon's bow gimmick, or Odysseus's bow gimmick. If she has no power, like she said she has no power, why is that the means of deciding a king? So surely she's fixing the entire thing by having that be the method which a king is chosen or a suitor is chosen. Also, take note that Tom Holland couldn't do that either. Also, would the suitors end up killing each other like barbarians if any other person managed to string the bow, or did they just do that because the beggar did it and they didn't know the beggar was Odysseus? As soon as Odysseus strings the bow, shouldn't the suitors all just kneel down and acknowledge their king as the one who's returned instead of immediately attacking him? Now, he suffered a lot, right? So you're not expecting him to die to a bunch of level 1 suitors. Yeah, he just basically plows through them, kills all of them, and you're kind of just watching and thinking, when is this movie going to end? His son becomes the king, despite not being able to do the bow thing, which I thought was hilarious, or barely defeat a level 1 NPC. And at this section of the movie, I just realized this movie is dragging on. We could have ended it like 45 minutes ago, but we're still going for some reason. And now we're going to get to the flow and the pacing issues I had with this movie, which is it drags on. It was a 3-hour movie and it felt like a 4-hour movie. Instead of you seeing cool stuff, you had scenes telling you how to feel and what is happening. What you want to see is more action, less plot reveal. So yeah, a good chunk of the movie felt like one long trailer, especially the beginning part, where it was just lots of little clips about the home island and Tom Holland's little bullshit and Anne Hathaway's. And these short scenes with brief dialogues were just edited back to back to back to back. And that was like 40 minutes before you actually got to see Matt Damon and what he's up to. So yeah, the first half was super slow, bunch of characters you really don't care about, you don't want to see again, but you're forced to see to get to the cool part, and then the movie picks up a little bit. Instead of things being well explored, right, they just rush through it. But they have so many different things they rush through that it just becomes repetitive, ponderous, and drags on. Every fast-paced scene in this movie was followed up by a slow scene, self-loathing Anne Hathaway or Tom Holland, or some clips of Matt Damon conversation that you don't give a fuck about. And because of so little time is actually spent on each island, what you get is a really repetitive plot sequence, which is they arrive in an island, some shit goes down, they need to run away, and big music happens, and the big chase scene happens, and that's what happens consistently. I really hated the memory recovery flashback as a gimmick to reveal the story. Why not just fucking reveal the story? Why do you got to put us through these people talking? And it would happen inconsistently as well. Like just the way they structured the scenes and the story is really frustrating. Like you only see the sacking of Troy at the very, very end of the movie. By the time they sacked Troy, I was just like, yeah, we know you sacked Troy. We know all of this happened. Now you're just dragging on. And then let's talk about some script and logic inconsistencies that I didn't like. First of all, there was zero character development for any of the actors, any of the characters in this movie. There was no character coaching. There was no acting coaches. There was no retakes, it seems like, of, hey, no, I want to get this with this kind of angle or with this kind of intention, or I want you to say it like this or speak with this tone or accent. We didn't get any of that. What you got was just actors being left alone to do whatever they want and portray the characters to the best of their abilities. Every island or character Matt Damon met gave him plot line or revealed to him what's about to happen, where he should go, and what he needs to do next. That was really annoying. You're not playing a video game here, you're watching a movie. And then them acknowledging the Bronze Age is dying is one of the stupidest things, probably the most stupid writing of all time, if we're being honest. It's one of the dumbest dialogues, up there with Game of Thrones Season 8. The Trojan horse is shown buried in the sand at the beginning and needing to be rescued from the waves. Seems like a dumb as fuck thing to do, even from a movie kind of point of view. If you're writing that, you're actually telling us the characters are quite stupid and they're making dumb decisions from the very get-go of the movie. So you have no reasons to get invested in any of them. Nolan also deliberately avoids showing any big gods like Zeus or actually revealing any gods in any meaningful way in a movie about Greek mythologies involving gods, which is quite interesting. Odysseus' comrades have zero characters. Like his crewmates have zero characters. They just kind of plot lines and dare to say a few dialogues to him at different points of the movie. The dog was a different species from when you saw it as a baby to when it grew up and died. Athena's only Odysseus can see her is just the hallucination gimmick made no sense. He didn't kill her. He did other people wrong. They should have been haunting him, not the ghost of this random woman who his soldiers killed. And it was just cringe. Her following and saying kind of one-liners back to him just felt super cringe. Like he's like, am I home? Don't you recognize home? That's the kind of dialogue she would use to talk back to him. You could cut her entire part out. The movie would be no different. And you could say that about any character in this movie. You could cut them out and the movie would still be the same. The ending actually departs from the source material as well, just if you want to talk more about that. The style of the movie, I mean, them choosing Viking style ships and Batman armor and Viking style housing instead of pillars and marbles is just terrible, inconsistent, just pissing all over Greek mythology. Using modern slang inside an ancient setting is so off-putting. It just takes you out of it, just pisses you off as well. The Cyclops scape is just really badly done. The original kind of mythology has it much better, where they get him drunk and they negotiate with him, or they trick him to get drunk to escape the cave. Anything here would have been better than what we got. Tom Holland never really knowing his father, the whole arc about, now I'm 18, I want to find my daddy, just felt fucking off, weird, seemed like he had dad issues. We talked about how the movie has nothing to do with Greek mythology, and it has everything to do with Nordic looks and Nordic vibes. And the Hell of Troy and the king and his brother, super rushed. There's no story there. Those are just plot lines to make you hate men and for Lupita to just say a bunch of bullshit about how men suck. The generic suitors needing to be bad for the sake of Matt Damon killing them, just again, bunch of shit, lazy writing. Them purposefully making Helen of Troy one of the ugliest characters in the movie was a ploy to make men look bad, because supposedly men are not even lustful. They're just barbarians. They're willing to just betray their honor, do horrible things, kill, pillage, just because they're men and they're pigs. And Helen of Troy being ugly characterized that. And she would actually say that as well. How, what was the war for? Why did you do all of this? The sack of Troy tried to build tension also over whether the Greeks got inside or not. So there was a scene where they were trying to get into the fucking castle after the men escaped from the horse. And that just dragged on. And there wasn't enough army men guarding the fucking walls of the city. There's no human connection between Odysseus and his men. There's no banter. There's no personality back and forths. It doesn't seem even like the men know Odysseus, or the Odysseus knows them, or their families, even though he handpicked who joins them. And also another problem I had is Christopher Nolan loves to tell you instead of show you what's happening. So instead of showing you and making you feel a way, he tells you how to feel, and he tells you then what's going to happen as well, and he shows it to you at the end. And then he expects you to feel what he feels. They just resorted to cheap kind of pops, as we would call it, for audience approval or disapproval. Look how great this guy is. He's blind. He says things that supposedly make him sound wise, even though he doesn't. For instance, he gives Tom Holland a fighting tip. Instead of saying something wise, like, in a martial arts kind of way, he literally tells him, draw him back. When he comes back, put a thrust of sword in his chest, right? He gives him a move by move kind of a tip, which is, again, another way of giving plot lines without actually showing it to you or being wise or sophisticated. They also use, again, just part of the cheap ploy, they also use animal abuse because, oh, you love animals, but we're going to abuse them so you can hate the villains in this movie. Shane from Walking Dead grabbed Helen's face next to Tom Holland at the meal and said, this is the face that launched 500 ships. And I shit you not, everybody in the cinema laughed. They were dying of laughter when they saw her face. So whatever effect they were going for, they got the opposite of it here, I can tell you that. And then we get into the bad acting category, where this is truly where I just thought the movie was terrible. Tom Holland, flat performance. Having Zendaya there made no difference whatsoever. Them using 21st century slang like dad, okay, or just modern day casual toned language. Also, the actors really are compensating for lack of acting skills by either whispering or being flat or yelling. That was the entirety of the movie. There was no other tonality. The blind guy fucking sucked, like in every way imaginable, in acting skills, in dialogue, in wisdom. He was not a sympathy character. Him crying because they beat him up and they took his livestock made no difference to me whatsoever. So yeah, these were around 200 points, maybe more, maybe less, on why I didn't like the movie, why I didn't like the casting, why I just thought it was one big pretentious art project of woke, lazy, boring, bad interpretation of the Greek mythology. If you understood what I said and you want to kind of provide your opinion, then leave the comments down below and I shall review them and get back to you. But anyways, thanks for watching and we'll be back with another video.